In the stillness of a moonlit room, a single voice whispering over distant thunder. This is the story of Celeste Rivas, a name that would haunt the shadows of justice. What began as a quiet disappearance unraveled into a labyrinth of deceit, betrayal, and unanswered questions. Tonight you'll travel with me through 10 moments, each soaked in mystery, each pulsing with tension, and by the end you'll know not only what might have happened to Celeste, but why her story demands you listen. If you stay with me, I promise you a ride through grief, intrigue, and the faint hope for truth. But first, make sure you hit subscribe and ring the bell, because this is one story you won't want to miss, and together we'll piece it all together. Celeste Rivas was last seen walking down Walnut Street just after 8 p.m. on a cold autumn evening. Her coat buttoned up tight, she paused at a street lamp flickering uncertainly, glanced at her phone, and then stepped into the darkness. Neighbors later reported hearing a silent car door slamming, but no voices. That visual, just a silhouette disappearing, became the first shiver in this case. Her roommate, Anna, returned home hours later to find the apartment door ajar. Celeste's jacket hung by the coat rack, purse left behind on the couch, phone resting face down in the middle of the coffee table. Everything seemed ordinary yet incomplete, as though someone paused mid-scene and walked away. Detectives combed the area, interviewed witnesses. One man claimed he saw a woman matching Celeste's description talking to a tall stranger near the intersection. His memory was shaky. He couldn't recall what the man looked like, what he said, but he felt uneasy, as if something was wrong. That unease became a thread investigators would tug at later. Meanwhile, Celeste's family, her mother, sister, father, were frantic. She had dinner plans that night, a shift early next morning, messages unread. Why didn't she reply? The alarm grew louder in their hearts. She was never late, never missed calls. This disappearance broke their rhythm. As the police searched, they discovered one odd detail. Celeste's laptop was open, with a half-finished video file found in her recycle bin. What was she working on? Who was watching her last edits? That laptop became a silent witness, holding digital shadows. Suspense built as the clock ticked. The city watched, the family despaired, and the investigation began. Each second waited with the possibility of discovery or despair. When the digital forensics team accessed Celeste's laptop, they expected to find notes or maybe personal emails, but what they found instead was a half-rendered video project titled Truth Never Sleeps. It was a chilling documentary. Celeste had been secretly compiling about local corruption, a trail that pointed to powerful people in her city. The deleted file, when restored, showed Celeste speaking directly to the camera, her tone calm but her eyes fearful. "If something happens to me," she said softly, "it's because of what I found." Those words sent shivers through everyone in the room. Detective Morgan, the lead investigator, froze the video and leaned in. Behind Celeste, on the blurred shelf, was a photo of her and an unknown man, someone who wasn't in any of her public posts. Who was he? The timestamp on the video was only 2 days before she vanished. That meant she knew something was coming. The discovery shifted the case from a missing persons investigation to a potential conspiracy. The police realized this wasn't just a disappearance, it might be a cover-up. News outlets got wind of the story. Celeste's name flashed across every screen, her smiling picture juxtaposed against the haunting words, "If something happens to me." The internet exploded with theories. Some said she was kidnapped by those she exposed. Others believed she ran to protect herself. The noise was deafening, but one detail was missing, proof of who she was exposing. The files she'd been collecting were gone, encrypted beyond access. Her best friend Anna came forward again, revealing that Celeste had received strange text messages weeks before. They were short, threatening, from an unknown number. One read, "You should stop digging." Another, "Truth has a price." Celeste had laughed them off at first, but later began locking her doors twice, closing blinds even in daylight. Her fear was quiet, private, and invisible, until now. Meanwhile, a neighbor's security camera caught a faint image the night she vanished, a black SUV idling at the corner, engine running for almost 15 minutes. No plates were visible, the windows tinted dark. That SUV became the heartbeat of the case, the ghostly machine that might have swallowed Celeste whole. As the investigators pressed deeper, they realized something even darker. Celeste's disappearance wasn't spontaneous. Someone had planned it, someone who'd been watching her for weeks, and as her video warned, the truth was far from asleep. The photograph on Celeste's shelf became the center of every theory. A smiling Celeste leaned into a tall man with a dark jacket and sharp jawline, his hand resting casually on her shoulder. His expression was unreadable, calm, but with an edge that unsettled even the investigators. The photo had no metadata, no date, no location tags. It wasn't found anywhere online, and her family swore they'd never seen him before. That man, unknown, unnamed, was about to become the prime suspect. Detective Morgan brought in a facial recognition analyst to run the image through databases. Hours passed, screens flickered, and finally, a partial match. His name surfaced as Damian Cross, a freelance journalist with a reputation for getting too close to dangerous stories. Strangely, Damian had vanished 3 months before Celeste did. His last known project? An investigation into the same local officials Celeste was researching. The connection was chilling. It was as if both of them had stepped too close to the same invisible line. Celeste's sister, Marisol, was shown the photo and broke down in tears. She said Celeste had mentioned someone named D once, someone who helped her find evidence and warned her to stay quiet. He told her they were watching, Marisol whispered. But she didn't believe him. That warning echoed in Detective Morgan's mind like a haunting prophecy. If Damian tried to protect her, who silenced him? And did Celeste follow him into the same trap? Investigators tracked Damian's last communication, a series of encrypted emails sent to Celeste 2 nights before she vanished. The messages were brief, almost coded. One simply said, "They found me. Don't open the folder until you're safe." The folder was nowhere to be found on Celeste's laptop. Someone had erased it cleanly, leaving only digital dust. It was professional work, too clean for an ordinary hacker. Detective Morgan replayed the video message from Celeste again. This time he noticed something he'd missed before. As she spoke, her eyes darted briefly to her right, as if someone was standing just outside the frame. He paused the video and adjusted the lighting. A faint reflection appeared in the glass cabinet behind her. A man's silhouette, broad shoulders, watching silently as she recorded her warning. The air in the investigation room grew cold. The team realized Celeste wasn't alone when she made her final video. Someone was there, someone she might have trusted, and whoever that person was, they were the last to see her alive. 2 days after the discovery of Celeste's video, Detective Morgan received an anonymous USB drive left at the front desk of the precinct. No fingerprints, just a black drive with a single file titled, "Look Again." When they opened it, the screen flickered. Grainy footage appeared, seemingly from a hidden camera. It showed Celeste's apartment, time-stamped the night she disappeared. At first she was pacing, anxious, phone in hand. Then a knock. She hesitated, walked to the door and froze. The camera angle didn't show who was there, but her body language changed from tense to startled, and then frightened. Within moments the feed went dark. The clip lasted barely 30 seconds, but every frame was electric with dread. Someone had installed a hidden camera without her knowing, and whoever recorded it had access to her private space. Forensics traced the footage's origin. It wasn't from her laptop, nor her security system. It had been remotely uploaded from an external source, meaning whoever was watching Celeste was technologically skilled, careful and close enough to her to plant a camera undetected. Detective Morgan's instincts screamed that this wasn't random surveillance. It was control. Someone wanted to watch her every move, perhaps even manipulate her fear. The detail that broke him was the sound at the end of the footage, a faint metallic jingle, like car keys followed by a man's calm voice saying, "It's time." That was the final word before static consumed the frame. When the video leaked to the public, chaos erupted. Social media became a wildfire of suspicion. Some accused her boyfriend, though she didn't have one. Others pointed fingers at the government officials she'd exposed. Online forums claimed the voice belonged to Damian Cross, fueling a conspiracy that maybe Celeste and Damian planned their disappearances together. But to the trained eye, the tone in that voice wasn't protective. It was commanding. Someone was in control, and Celeste was not running. She was being taken. Anna, her roommate, admitted something she'd hidden. 3 days before Celeste disappeared, she'd found a small device stuck behind their TV. At the time, she thought it was part of the cable box, so she ignored it. When shown the recovered footage, she realized the truth. It was a miniature surveillance camera, one of several possibly placed around the apartment. Every corner of Celeste's life had been infiltrated. Detective Morgan felt a heavy silence settle over the case room that night. They weren't just looking for a missing woman anymore. They were fighting an invisible predator, a planner who always stayed one move ahead. And as the storm of media pressure grew, one thing became clear. Whoever recorded Celeste's last night wasn't finished yet. 3 nights after the hidden footage went public, the Rivas family received a phone call from an unknown number. It was just past midnight. Marisol answered, her hands trembling, half expecting it to be another cruel prank. But what she heard froze her in place. Static, faint breathing, and then a whisper. A woman's voice, weak but unmistakable, said, "Marie, don't trust him." The line cut off before she could speak. The call lasted only 11 seconds. The number was untraceable. But the voice, Marisol swore it was her sister. When detectives analyzed the recording, they found no signs of editing. The background hum matched that of a basement or concrete room, with the faint dripping of water echoing every few seconds. There was no music, no movement, just silence and fear. Celeste's mother broke down as she listened, clutching the phone like it was her daughter's hand. "She's alive," she cried. "She's trying to tell us something." The phrase, "don't trust him," became a haunting code repeated by every news anchor and online sleuth. Who was he? Detective Morgan reviewed the possible suspects again. Damian Cross, the unknown man from the video, and even one of the lead officers who'd been first on the scene. Every man in Celeste's circle became a potential betrayer. But when the detective dug into the call's signal pattern, he discovered something even more alarming. It came from inside the same cell tower zone as the police department itself. Someone within law enforcement might have rerouted that call. Someone close. Someone who knew every step of the investigation. Anna came forward again, saying she'd noticed a man in an unmarked car parked across their street in the weeks before Celeste vanished. He wore a dark cap, never left the car, just sat watching. When the police checked the street cameras, they found fragments of a face, blurred, but familiar. It was Officer Lennox, Morgan's own partner. A shiver ran through him as he replayed the footage. Lennox had been with him during nearly every phase of the case. He'd handled evidence, made the press statements, even offered to check the family's phones for tracking devices. Morgan's pulse thundered. He pulled Lennox's records quietly, without alerting anyone. What he found shattered the fragile trust holding the department together. Lennox had been assigned, years ago, to a private security firm contracted by the same officials Celeste had investigated. That connection was buried, erased from his record, but it was enough. He wasn't just a partner. He was part of the network Celeste was exposing. As dawn crept through the blinds, Morgan sat in his car, staring at the evidence. The voice on the phone had warned them not to trust him. Now Morgan knew who that him might be. The realization made his heart pound, because if Celeste was alive, Lennox was the one who knew where she was. And if Morgan confronted him too soon, Celeste might never be found. Detective Morgan spent the next 24 hours pretending everything was normal. He sat beside Lennox in the precinct, shared coffee, discussed leads, all while his gut twisted like barbed wire. Every word Lennox spoke now felt rehearsed, every smile carefully placed. Morgan watched him through the reflection of his monitor, studying his movements, waiting for something to slip. When Lennox offered to drop by the Rivas home again for updates, Morgan's blood ran cold. He was circling them, tightening control. That night, after everyone left, Morgan broke protocol. He entered the evidence room alone and reviewed all the logs Lennox had handled. What he discovered confirmed his fear. Lennox had quietly replaced one of the hard drives from Celeste's laptop with a blank clone. The real one was missing. Forensics hadn't noticed the swap because the drive had been copied perfectly. It was a master-level cover-up. Someone had erased the trail leading to the name Celeste was exposing. The truth wasn't gone. It was hidden in the hands of a man Morgan worked beside every day. Digging deeper, Morgan found an unlisted bank transaction under Lennox's name. $25,000 wired from a shell company registered in South America. The company name was Nexus Data Solutions, the same organization Damian Cross had mentioned in an old investigative post months before his disappearance. Nexus wasn't just a company, it was a laundering front. A digital smokescreen for moving money and silencing people who got too close. Celeste had stumbled right into their operation. And Lennox? He was their cleaner. When Morgan confronted him, it wasn't in an interrogation room. It was outside, in the parking lot, under flickering streetlights and the hum of night insects. "Where's the drive, Lennox?" he asked quietly. Lennox didn't flinch. "You should have left it alone, Morgan," he said, his voice eerily calm. She did this to herself. Curiosity kills. His words hit like ice. Morgan realized he'd admitted just enough. He wasn't denying Celeste's fate. He was justifying it. The next moment blurred. Morgan's hand went to his holster as Lennox reached into his coat. A flash of metal. A gunshot shattered the silence. For a second, Morgan thought he'd been hit, but it was Lennox who stumbled back, clutching his side. Morgan had fired first. The sound echoed across the empty lot like thunder. Lennox fell to his knees, gasping, and muttered his final words through blood-streaked lips. "You'll never find her. She's already part of the story." Morgan called for backup, but deep down, he knew the man who might have led them to Celeste was gone. Still, his dying words weren't empty. They were a clue. Part of the story. It haunted him all night. What did it mean? Was Celeste hidden somewhere tied to her own investigation, her documentary, her voice? Or was the story itself being written to bury her forever? Hours after Lennox's death, Detective Morgan sat alone in the dim light of the evidence lab, surrounded by the fragments of Celeste's life. Her laptop, hard drives, notes, and the haunting clip of her final recording. Lennox's last words replayed in his mind. "She's already part of the story." The phrase wouldn't let go of him. He opened Celeste's recovered video file once again, studying every frame, every flicker. Then, in one quiet moment, he saw it. For just a split second before the video cut to static, a string of random letters flashed at the bottom corner of the screen. XH9 42NE12. It wasn't random at all. It looked like a code. Morgan's instincts sharpened. He cross-referenced the string through Celeste's notes and emails. Hidden inside a folder labeled Doc Outline Final was a footnote containing the same sequence, embedded in her paragraph about Nexus data solutions. She had planted a breadcrumb. When Morgan decrypted the code, it opened a hidden directory within her old cloud storage, an encrypted folder titled Archive 7. What he found inside was the missing half of her documentary. Rough footage, interviews and screenshots of confidential documents naming politicians, corporate heads, and even police officers involved in laundering millions through fake charities. It was explosive, career-ending evidence, and it was everything someone would kill to protect. As Morgan clicked through the files, one video stood out, a conversation between Celeste and Damian Cross. They were sitting in a dim cafe, voices hushed but urgent. Damian leaned forward and whispered, "They've already followed me. If I disappear, the evidence goes to you. Keep it hidden, Celeste. Promise me." Celeste nodded, her hands shaking slightly. "I'll finish the story," she said, "even if it kills me." The timestamp was from the night before Damian vanished. It wasn't just partnership, it was a pact. Then came a chilling revelation. The last file in the folder wasn't a video. It was an audio log, time-stamped 1 hour before Celeste's disappearance. She was recording herself, breathing fast, terrified. "They know I've got it," she whispered. "Someone inside the department warned them I'm planning to release it. If anyone finds this, tell my family I tried." The sound of a door creaking open followed, a man's footsteps, and then her whisper trembling. "Damian? Is that you?" The recording ended there. Morgan's hands shook as he listened. Damian Cross was supposed to have disappeared long before that night. But if that was truly his voice at her door, then everything was backwards. Was Damian part of the cover-up after all? Or was he being controlled, forced to lure her out? The question burned inside him unanswered. He felt the walls of corruption tightening, wrapping around the case like a noose. At sunrise, Morgan made a decision. He would leak the files anonymously. If the system was compromised, he couldn't trust anyone, not even his own department. But as he prepared the upload, a strange notification popped up on his screen. A new message appeared under Celeste's username, posted 10 minutes ago. It read, "Stop looking, detective. You're next." Morgan stared at the glowing words on his monitor. "Stop looking, detective. You're next." For a long moment, he couldn't breathe. The message had come from Celeste's own account, verified and time-stamped through her personal email, an account locked since the night she vanished. The recovery log showed no breaches, no sign of hacking. Yet someone, somewhere, had access to her credentials. Either Celeste was alive, or someone had kept her identity alive to manipulate the investigation. He immediately called the cybercrime division, but before they could trace the IP, the message vanished, auto-deleted, leaving no digital footprint. Whoever sent it was meticulous. Almost taunting, Morgan leaned back, exhausted, feeling the weight of invisible eyes on him. He knew this was a warning, but it also confirmed one terrifying truth. The people who took Celeste were still watching. And now, they wanted him to stop digging. At dawn, Morgan drove to the Rivas house to inform the family about the message. But before he could speak, Marisol rushed to him with tears streaming down her face. "We got another call," she said, trembling. Same voice as before, but this time she said more. She handed him her phone. The recording was faint, but the words were clear. "Don't let them bury the story. He's alive. Look for the red door." Then silence. Morgan's stomach twisted. He's alive. Was she talking about Damien? "Look for the red door." It sounded like a clue. Morgan replayed the video from Celeste's footage in his mind, the cafe scene with Damien. In the background of that clip, there was a faint blur of a red-painted door behind them, tagged with peeling letters spelling Harbor Works. It was an old warehouse district near the bay, shut down years ago. He'd passed it countless times without a thought. Now it felt like a beacon. Ignoring his chief's orders to stand down, Morgan went there alone that night. The warehouse loomed like a carcass against the fog, the red door glowing faintly under a flickering streetlight. He drew his weapon, heart hammering, and pushed it open. The stench of dust and old oil filled the air. Inside, faint light leaked through cracks in the ceiling. Footprints, fresh ones, tracked through the grime. Someone had been there recently. Deeper inside, Morgan found a makeshift studio. Cameras, microphones, and a half-finished editing setup. On the table was a USB drive labeled Final Cut, Truth Never Sleeps. His pulse spiked. It was Celeste's missing documentary, the completed version. He plugged it into his portable device and the screen came alive. Celeste's face appeared, pale but resolute. "If you're seeing this," she said, voice steady, "it means they couldn't stop me. But I need you to understand, this isn't over. They're still out there. Damien tried to save me, but they made him part of their plan." Her voice cracked slightly. Then the feed froze. Morgan's hand trembled as he replayed it. Realizing the video wasn't new, it was scheduled to upload automatically the night she vanished. But someone intercepted it. She had planned everything: backup uploads, safety copies, escape signals. She knew she was walking into danger, and she still went through with it. That meant one impossible thing: Celeste might have survived. As Morgan stepped back into the cold night, headlights suddenly flooded the warehouse. A black SUV rolled into view, the same one caught on camera the night she disappeared. Doors slammed. Shadows emerged. Morgan raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a familiar voice echoed from the dark. "Detective, you shouldn't have come alone." The voice from the shadows was unmistakable. Damien Cross. Morgan froze, his grip tightening around his gun. Damien stepped forward into the light, looking thinner, older, with a haunted edge in his eyes. "You're supposed to be dead," Morgan said quietly, disbelief curdling into suspicion. Damien raised his hand slowly, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and warning. "They wanted you to think that," he murmured. "They wanted everyone to think that. Because I became the story they needed to hide her." Morgan didn't lower his weapon. "Where's Celeste?" he demanded. Damien exhaled shakily. "Safe," he whispered. "At least for now. But you've put her in danger by coming here. They're watching everything, even this place." He gestured toward the upper rafters, where small red lights blinked faintly. Cameras. Morgan's heart thudded. They weren't alone. He'd walked into a trap. Damien moved closer. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "Celeste exposed something far bigger than Nexus. It goes up the chain. Judges, police chiefs, international investors. She didn't just record a story, Morgan. She recorded a confession. Hers, mine, theirs. She played the system, and they'll burn the world to erase her voice." Before Morgan could respond, the warehouse lights blazed to life. Black-clad figures in tactical gear burst through the doors, guns drawn. "Hands where we can see them." one shouted. Morgan and Damien ducked behind a pillar as bullets cracked through the air. The sound was deafening, sparks flying from the steel beams. Morgan fired back, but the men weren't aiming to kill. They were aiming to retrieve. Their target wasn't him. It was the USB drive on the table. The completed documentary, the proof. Damien lunged for the table, grabbing the drive as a bullet grazed his shoulder.
"Take it!"
he shouted, tossing it to Morgan. The detective caught it just as another round shattered the glass beside him. Damien fell to the ground, clutching his side. "Go!" he yelled. "Don't let them bury her twice." Morgan hesitated for half a second, then bolted through the red door, the sound of gunfire echoing behind him. Outside, the night was chaos. The black SUV roared to life again, chasing him through the fog-shrouded docks. Morgan dove between shipping containers, clutching the USB to his chest. Every breath burned. He could hear footsteps closing in, radios crackling. Then, from the distance, a faint, desperate voice called his name. He froze. It wasn't Damien's voice. It was Celeste's. "Here!" she cried. "Morgan, this way!" He turned toward the sound and saw a figure. A woman, slim, dark hair tangled, her coat torn. Celeste Rivas, alive. She was waving from behind a storage crate. But before he could reach her, headlights flared again. The SUV screeched between them, blocking his path. Doors flew open. Two men jumped out, grabbing her as she screamed his name. "Celeste!" Morgan shouted, sprinting forward, but one of the men fired a warning shot into the ground, forcing him to stop. The vehicle peeled away into the night, her voice echoing through the fog until it vanished completely. Morgan collapsed to his knees, helpless, watching the taillights fade. She'd been there, real, alive, and now she was gone again. But this time he had the evidence. The truth she died or lived for. He clutched the USB in his fist, vowing he wouldn't let her disappear again. The scene ended with a whisper of the wind through the empty dockyard, carrying her voice faintly, like a ghost. "Finish the story, detective." Morgan didn't sleep for the next 48 hours. He drove straight out of the city, every mirror in his car flashing with suspicion. The USB Celeste had died protecting sat in the passenger seat like a living thing, pulsing with danger. He could feel the weight of her trust in his palm, and the ghosts of her words echoing, "Finish the story." He stopped at an abandoned radio station on the outskirts of town, one of the few places with an unmonitored satellite uplink. The building smelled of rust and silence. As dawn bled across the horizon, Morgan connected the USB to the dusty console and began the upload to a secure cloud, routing it through dozens of anonymous networks. On his laptop screen, Celeste's face flickered once more, this time in full. The complete documentary unfolded before him. Names, bank records, video evidence, testimonies of victims. It was the kind of truth that shattered careers and toppled systems. Every word was a dagger aimed at the heart of power. As the upload neared completion, his phone buzzed, an unknown number again. He hesitated, then answered. Silence. Then a woman's breath, ragged, tired. "You did it," she whispered. His heart stopped. "Celeste." But before he could speak again, the line went dead. The number vanished from his log. The signal trace led nowhere. He stared into the dawn, half believing, half afraid that maybe she'd found her way out of the darkness, just long enough to see the truth set free. Minutes later, headlights appeared down the empty road. Black SUVs again, too many to count. They'd found him. Morgan pressed enter, sending the final upload through the satellite, and then wiped every trace from his drive. He looked up at the incoming convoy, a calmness settling over him. The truth was already out. Even if they took him, it was too late. Across the world, Celeste's documentary began appearing on news feeds, mirrors, blogs, every corner of the internet lit with her face, her voice, her courage. The truth had finally woken. The SUVs surrounded the building. Men poured out with weapons drawn. Morgan raised his hands, the faintest smile breaking through the exhaustion. "You can bury me," he said softly, "but you can't bury her voice." The leader stepped forward, aiming his weapon. But before he could fire, every phone in the convoy buzzed, the same video auto-playing. Celeste's words filled the air around them, echoing from every device. Truth never sleeps. Even in the dark, the men froze, powerless. Morgan closed his eyes, the light of dawn washing over him. For the first time, the world was finally listening. Celeste Rivas' story isn't just about disappearance, it's about defiance. About a woman who refused to let corruption silence her voice. Maybe she's gone, or maybe she's still out there, watching the truth she fought for unfold. What we know for sure is this: she changed everything. Her courage forced the world to see what it tried to hide. If you've come this far into her story, don't let it end here. Hit subscribe, share her name, and keep her truth alive. Because somewhere, in every whispered injustice, there's another Celeste, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. This was the story of Celeste Rivas. And remember, truth never sleeps.